all kinds of vehicles. Every day he works on damaged engines, worn-out parts, and cars that most people would consider beyond repair. Ironically, despite spending his life fixing automobiles, he has never been able to own a brand new car himself. With his family's current financial situation, buying a new vehicle is simply out of reach. That is why he came up with a more affordable solution, purchasing an old car to use as his daily transportation. At first, he searched the used car market, hoping to find a vehicle that was still in good working condition. However, after visiting several sellers, he quickly realized that even older cars that could be driven immediately were still far too expensive for his budget. Although they cost much less than a new car, they still required more money than he could comfortably afford. Instead of giving up, he came up with a much bolder idea. Rather than buying a functioning used car, why not purchase a completely broken down vehicle at a very low price and restore it himself? With years of experience in automotive repair, he believed that if he invested enough time, patience, and hard work, he could transform what appeared to be nothing more than a pile of scrap into a reliable vehicle once again. Not only would this save him a significant amount of money, but it would also give him the opportunity to put his skills to the ultimate test. After searching for quite some time, he finally found exactly what he had been looking for. It was an old convertible that had clearly seen much better days. One glance was enough to reveal the damage caused by years of neglect. The original paint had almost completely peeled away, leaving behind a faded and weathered exterior. Large patches of rust covered the body, while dirt, dust, dried leaves, and debris had accumulated over every surface, making it obvious that the car had been abandoned outdoors for many years without any maintenance. The interior was in even worse condition. The seats were badly worn, with cracked and torn upholstery that had deteriorated after years of exposure to the elements. Many of the dashboard controls and interior components were either damaged or no longer functioning properly. When he opened the hood, the situation looked just as discouraging. The engine was coated with years of grime, dirt, and old oil. Rust had begun spreading across numerous metal components, the electrical wiring had deteriorated with age, and many of the rubber hoses had become brittle and cracked. To almost anyone else, this car appeared to have reached the end of its life. But this mechanic saw something different. He knew that, despite its terrible condition, many of these problems could still be repaired with the right knowledge, enough patience, and plenty of determination. The only thing that truly mattered to him was the price. Fortunately, the owner had already given up on the vehicle. After sitting unused for so many years, they no longer believed it was worth repairing and decided to sell it for little more than scrap value. For just $100, this man became the owner of the entire car. It was simply an opportunity too good to pass up. Even though he knew the restoration would demand countless hours of hard work, he never hesitated. To him, this was more than just buying an old car. It was a chance to prove his craftsmanship and turn what seemed impossible into reality. Once the purchase was complete, another challenge remained. The car was in such poor condition that it couldn't move under its own power. The wheels were nearly seized, the engine wouldn't start, and the drivetrain was completely inoperative. The only way to get it home was to hire a tow truck. After everything was prepared, the neglected convertible was carefully loaded onto the trailer. Watching this rusty, dust-covered vehicle leave the place where it had sat abandoned for years, few people would believe it still had a future. But for this mechanic, this was only the beginning. He knew that hundreds of hours of demanding work lay ahead. Every bolt would need to be removed. Every component would have to be cleaned, repaired, or replaced when necessary. The chassis, engine, suspension, braking system, interior, and exterior would all undergo a complete restoration. The question now is whether his experience, patience, and exceptional craftsmanship will be enough to transform this $100 wreck into a beautiful, fully functional automobile once again. Stay with us until the end of the video to witness every step of this incredible restoration journey and see whether this forgotten convertible can truly be brought back to life. Because this car had deteriorated so severely after years of being abandoned outdoors, nearly every single component required a complete inspection and restoration. The mechanic knew there would be no shortcuts. If he wanted this vehicle to run reliably again, he would have to rebuild it from the ground up, carefully dismantling every major component before restoring it piece by piece. The very first task was removing the engine from the vehicle. This is one of the most critical stages of any full restoration project. The engine is the heart of the car, but it is also the heaviest and most complex assembly. Leaving it in place would make it nearly impossible to reach many areas that needed to be thoroughly cleaned, repaired, and restored. Drawing on his years of experience, he carefully disconnected the cooling system, fuel lines, electrical wiring, exhaust connections, and every other component attached to the engine. Each step had to be carried out with great care to avoid damaging parts that had already become fragile after years of neglect. Once everything was disconnected, the engine was lifted out of the engine bay using a hoist and placed on a work stand where it would later undergo its own complete rebuild. With the engine removed, the true condition of the vehicle became even more apparent. Years of accumulated grease, dirt, and grime covered almost every surface inside the engine bay. Rust had spread across numerous metal panels, and many hidden areas that had never been visible before were now exposed. It was time to begin one of the most demanding stages of the entire restoration, the complete cleaning and restoration of the car's body. Unlike cleaning a vehicle's interior or washing its exterior, restoring a heavily corroded body shell is an incredibly challenging task. The goal is not simply to remove dirt. Every trace of old paint must be stripped away, every patch of rust must be eliminated, and the bare metal must be restored to a clean, solid surface before any further work can begin. In large professional restoration shops, this process is often carried out using an electrolytic dipping tank or a specialized chemical stripping bath. The entire body shell is submerged in the solution, allowing old paint, rust, grease, and years of contamination to be removed far more efficiently than by hand. This method not only saves a tremendous amount of time, but also reaches tight corners and hidden cavities that are extremely difficult to clean with conventional tools. Unfortunately, this mechanic did not have access to such expensive equipment. His workshop was equipped with only basic tools, along with years of experience, determination, and an incredible amount of patience. As a result, he had no choice but to remove every bit of rust entirely by hand. That meant every rusty section had to be treated using angle grinders, wire brushes, sanding discs, and various hand tools. Every inch of the body required careful attention. Some heavily corroded areas demanded repeated grinding before the rust was completely removed. Tight corners, narrow seams, and complex body contours made the job even more difficult and incredibly time-consuming. This stage required far more than physical effort. It demanded precision and experience. Grinding too aggressively could damage or weaken the original metal panels. On the other hand, leaving even small traces of rust behind would allow corrosion to return beneath the new paint in the future. For that reason, every section had to be inspected repeatedly until he was completely satisfied with the result. Day after day, he continued working with remarkable patience. Although the work was repetitive and exhausting, he refused to rush through any part of the process. For him, quality was always more important than speed. Because he understood that every restoration step that followed depended on the quality of the preparation completed here. After countless hours of dedicated work, his efforts finally began to pay off. Little by little, the rust disappeared, the old paint was completely removed, and the body shell gradually revealed clean, solid metal once again. The car that had once been covered in rust, dirt, and years of neglect was finally beginning to show signs of life. Under the workshop lights, the freshly cleaned body looked brighter, cleaner, and fully prepared for the next stages of restoration. This was only the beginning of the journey. Yet it was also one of the most important milestones. Thanks to his patience, experience, and exceptional craftsmanship, the car now had a strong foundation for everything that would come next. But can this once-forgotten wreck continue its incredible transformation? Stay with us as we move on to the next stages of the restoration and witness how this neglected automobile is slowly brought back to life, one carefully restored part at a time. What an incredible transformation! After completely cleaning the body shell and removing every trace of rust, the mechanic was finally ready to begin one of the most exciting stages of the entire restoration, the repainting process. Before applying the new paint, however, the body still required several important preparation steps. He first mixed body filler to the proper consistency and carefully applied it to every uneven area, filling small dents and imperfections across the body panels. This stage demanded patience and precision, because even the slightest flaw would become obvious once the final paint was applied. After the filler had fully cured, he spent hours sanding every surface until it was perfectly smooth. Only when he was completely satisfied with the finish did he move on to spraying the primer. Although the primer would eventually be hidden beneath the final paint, it plays a vital role in any professional restoration. It improves paint adhesion, protects the metal from future corrosion, and creates a smooth, uniform foundation for the color coat. Once the primer had dried, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. After carefully considering his options, he chose a bright, vibrant red as the car's new color. It was a bold choice, full of energy, and completely different from the faded, weathered appearance the car had worn for so many years. From the very first pass of the spray gun, the transformation was astonishing. Wherever the fresh red paint landed, the car instantly seemed to come back to life. The dull, rust-covered metal slowly disappeared beneath a glossy new finish, revealing a vehicle that looked nothing like the neglected wreck it had once been. It almost felt as though the mechanic was performing magic, bringing the forgotten automobile back to life with nothing more than his skill and dedication. Every stroke of the spray gun was smooth, steady, and carefully controlled. He maintained the perfect distance between the spray gun and the body panels, ensuring the paint was applied evenly without runs, drips, or uneven patches. His experience and attention to detail were clearly visible in every movement, resulting in a flawless finish that covered the entire vehicle. Before long, the entire body had been coated in its stunning new red paint. If you hadn't seen the condition of the car at the beginning of this restoration, it would be almost impossible to believe this was the very same vehicle. The transformation of the exterior alone was nothing short of remarkable. With the painting process complete, the mechanic wasted no time before moving on to the next stage of the restoration. His attention now turned to the interior, beginning with the seats. Compared to removing rust and repainting the entire body, cleaning the seats was probably one of the easiest jobs in the entire project. What was truly surprising, however, was how well they had survived after spending years exposed to the elements. A closer inspection revealed that the leather had simply become dirty, faded, and discolored over time. Remarkably, it showed almost no serious tears, cracks, or peeling. This speaks volumes about the quality of the materials used by the manufacturer. Because this is a convertible, the designers knew from the beginning that the seats would frequently be exposed to sunlight, rain, humidity, and changing weather conditions. For that reason, they selected a premium automotive leather specifically designed to resist UV rays, moisture, and long-term outdoor exposure far better than the materials commonly found in ordinary vehicles. Thanks to that durable leather, the seats had remained structurally sound despite years of neglect. Using specialized leather cleaner, soft brushes, and plenty of patience, the mechanic carefully removed years of dirt and stubborn stains without damaging the material. The results were nothing short of impressive. As the dirt disappeared, the original color of the leather gradually returned, and the seats began to look fresh and clean once again. What had once appeared old, dusty, and worn now looked remarkably close to new, perfectly complementing the brilliant red paint covering the exterior. Little by little, the car was undergoing an extraordinary transformation. With every completed step, it moved one stage closer to becoming a beautiful, fully restored automobile once again. It was yet another reminder that with enough skill, patience, and determination, even a vehicle that seems beyond saving can be given an entirely new life. And finally, we have reached the most exciting stage of this entire restoration journey, the complete rebuilding of the engine and the car's mechanical systems. This is undoubtedly the most challenging and technically demanding part of the entire project. After all, no matter how beautiful the paintwork looks or how clean the interior becomes, A car can only truly be considered restored when its engine runs smoothly and reliably once again. The mechanic understands this better than anyone. Instead of rushing to reassemble the vehicle, he devotes all of his attention to what is truly the heart of the car, the engine. The first step is to completely disassemble it. He doesn't stop at removing the major external components. Instead, he carefully takes apart every internal assembly until the engine is reduced to hundreds of individual parts. One by one, every bolt, gear, bearing, shaft, piston, and countless other components are removed with exceptional care. For most people, this is probably the most overwhelming part of the entire restoration. Simply looking at the workbench covered with hundreds of engine components is enough to realize just how incredibly complex an automobile engine really is. Every single part, no matter how small, has a specific purpose, and all of them must work together perfectly for the engine to operate properly. That is exactly why very few people have the confidence to completely disassemble an automobile engine. This kind of work requires years of experience, advanced mechanical knowledge, and highly developed technical skills. A professional mechanic must understand the function of every component, remember its exact location, know the correct installation sequence, and tighten every bolt to the proper torque specification during reassembly. Even the smallest mistake, installing a component incorrectly, placing a washer in the wrong position, or tightening a bolt too much or too little, could prevent the engine from running properly, or even cause serious damage the moment it is started. That is why every step must be performed with complete concentration and absolute precision. Fortunately, this mechanic possesses exactly that level of expertise. Throughout the entire process, he works with remarkable confidence and precision. There is no hesitation in his movements as he methodically disassembles each section of the engine while carefully organizing every component so that nothing will be misplaced during reassembly. Once the engine has been completely taken apart, he begins cleaning and restoring every individual component. Years of grease, dirt, carbon deposits, and oil residue are removed using specialized cleaning solutions and professional tools. Each part is then carefully inspected for wear or damage. Components that remain in good condition are thoroughly cleaned and prepared for reuse, while any worn or damaged parts are replaced to ensure long-term reliability. His attention to detail doesn't stop with the internal components. The engine block itself also receives a complete makeover. After removing every trace of grease, oxidation, and surface corrosion, he carefully prepares the metal before applying a fresh coat of paint. In a surprisingly short time, the once dirty, weathered engine has been completely transformed. Looking at it now, it is hard to believe that this is the same engine that had been sitting unused for years. With every component restored, the reassembly process finally begins. This is where the mechanic's experience truly shines. Every part is returned to its exact original position, following the proper factory assembly sequence. Each bolt is tightened to the correct specification, every moving component is carefully aligned, and nothing is left to chance. His patience and precision ensure that the engine will perform exactly as it was designed to. Watching him work, what impresses me most is not only his technical ability, but also his dedication and professionalism. He never rushes through a single step. Whether he is handling a major engine component or tightening a tiny bolt, every task receives the same level of care and attention, and that commitment to quality is what makes this restoration so remarkable. To me, this is what separates an ordinary mechanic from someone who is truly passionate about automotive restoration. He isn't simply repairing a car so it can run again, he is carefully bringing every component back to the best condition possible, giving this forgotten machine an entirely new life. What about you? After watching this incredible restoration process, what do you think of this mechanic's craftsmanship and attention to detail? Did anything during the rebuild impress you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinion about this amazing transformation and the incredible skill that made it possible. After thoroughly cleaning, inspecting, and restoring every engine component, the mechanic finally begins one of the most critical stages of the entire rebuild, reassembling the engine. This is the moment that will determine whether all the hard work invested over the past several days will pay off. Even the smallest mistake during assembly could prevent the engine from running properly or even stop it from starting altogether. For that reason, he doesn't rush the process. Every step is carried out with complete focus and precision, carefully assembling each component according to the proper technical sequence. Watching him work, it's clear that every movement is confident and deliberate, as though he knows this engine inside and out. In reality, completely disassembling an engine into hundreds of individual parts and then rebuilding it from scratch is something that very few mechanics are capable of doing. It requires years of hands-on experience, extensive mechanical knowledge, and a deep understanding of how every component inside the engine functions. A mechanic must know the engine almost like the back of his hand. One by one, the pistons are carefully installed back into their respective cylinders with exceptional precision. The connecting rods, crankshaft, camshaft, timing gears, timing chain, bearings, bushings, and hundreds of other components are then reassembled according to the manufacturer's specifications. Every single part has a specific purpose, and all of them must work together perfectly to create a smooth and reliable engine. The job involves much more than simply placing parts back where they belong. Every bolt must also be tightened to the correct torque specification. If a bolt is over-tightened, certain components can become damaged or distorted. If it is too loose, the engine could develop oil leaks, excessive vibration, or mechanical failures after only a short period of operation. That is why precision is absolutely essential throughout the entire assembly process. What impresses me most is the mechanic's patience and attention to detail. Throughout the rebuild, he never appears rushed. Every component is carefully inspected before being installed, and each completed assembly is checked once again before moving on to the next step. That level of dedication inspires confidence that the engine is being rebuilt to the highest possible standard. I've watched many automotive restoration videos over the years, from classic car restorations to abandoned vehicle rescues. However, I can honestly say that I've rarely seen anyone completely disassemble an engine down to virtually every individual component like this. Most restoration projects involve cleaning the exterior of the engine or replacing only a few major parts. Completely tearing an engine apart and rebuilding it from the ground up requires extraordinary confidence, experience, and technical skill. Perhaps that's exactly what makes this restoration so fascinating to watch. The audience isn't just seeing a rusty old car receive a fresh coat of paint. They're witnessing every stage of bringing an entire machine back to life. It reminds us that restoring a vehicle is about far more than appearance. Hidden beneath the bodywork are hundreds of carefully rebuilt components that make the car truly functional once again. The longer I watch, the more I appreciate the passion this mechanic has for his craft. He isn't simply trying to make the engine start again. Instead, he's carefully restoring every single component to the best condition possible, almost as if he were building an entirely new engine from the ground up. That commitment to quality is what makes this restoration project truly special. At this point, the car is nearly ready to return to the road. The body has been beautifully repainted, the interior has been restored, and the engine is gradually coming back together piece by piece. Only a few final steps remain before this forgotten automobile gets its long-awaited second chance. Personally, I think this is one of the most impressive automotive restoration videos I've ever watched, not only because of the remarkable transformation, but also because of the mechanic's exceptional craftsmanship, patience, and professionalism throughout every stage of the project. Now it's your turn. Have you ever watched an engine rebuild as detailed as this before? What do you think of this mechanic's skills and attention to detail? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinion on this incredible restoration journey. After completing the entire engine assembly, the mechanic finally reaches the moment he has been waiting for throughout this restoration project, the engine's very first start after the complete rebuild. This is always the most nerve-wracking moment in any automotive restoration. No matter how carefully every component has been inspected and assembled, no one can be absolutely certain that the engine will run perfectly on the very first attempt. Even the smallest mistake during assembly could prevent it from starting or cause serious mechanical problems. Before turning the key, he performs one final inspection. He carefully checks the electrical connections, fuel system, cooling system, and lubrication system to make sure everything is exactly where it should be. Once he is satisfied that every component is ready, he slowly turns the ignition key. What an incredible moment. After only a few seconds, the engine comes to life. The sound of the freshly rebuilt engine fills the workshop, confirming that all of the countless hours of hard work have paid off. Although further testing is still necessary, this is already a huge success for both the mechanic and everyone following this remarkable restoration journey. Rather than shutting the engine off immediately, he allows it to idle for several minutes while carefully monitoring its performance. During this time, he listens closely to every sound coming from the engine, checks the oil pressure, cooling system, lubrication, and engine speed to ensure everything is operating smoothly. This step is essential because it confirms that every internal component is working together exactly as intended. After a thorough inspection, the engine continues to run smoothly and reliably without any signs of trouble. It is clear that the restoration has been a tremendous success. With the engine performing perfectly, he begins installing it back into the vehicle. Because the engine is far too heavy to lift by hand, he uses a homemade engine hoist to carefully lower it into the engine bay. Although the lifting equipment is simple, it performs the job safely and effectively, allowing the engine to be positioned with remarkable precision. One by one, every mounting bolt is tightened securely. The wiring harness, fuel lines, cooling hoses, and every remaining connection are carefully reinstalled. Before long, the car is fully reassembled and ready for its first drive after years of sitting abandoned. These are the final stages of an incredible restoration journey. What was once a rusty, neglected vehicle that seemed destined for the scrapyard has now been completely transformed through patience, determination, and exceptional craftsmanship. And at last, the moment everyone has been waiting for finally arrives. The restored car slowly rolls onto the road and drives smoothly under the power of its newly rebuilt engine. Watching it move once again is an unforgettable sight. It is almost impossible to believe that this is the same vehicle that, not long ago, was nothing more than an abandoned wreck with little hope of ever running again. This remarkable transformation represents far more than hundreds of hours of hard work. It is a powerful reminder of what can be achieved through knowledge, experience, perseverance, and genuine passion. Sometimes, with enough dedication, even what seems impossible can become reality. Thank you so much for joining us throughout this incredible restoration journey. We truly hope you enjoyed watching every stage of the rebuild and found inspiration in the mechanic's remarkable skill, patience, and determination. If you enjoy automotive restoration videos like this one, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and tell us which part of the restoration impressed you the most. Your support and feedback motivate us to continue sharing more amazing restoration projects in the future. Until next time, we wish you happiness, good health, and all the best. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.